talk a little bit about calendars, if that's all right with people. You know newspaper astrology. It uses what is called a tropical zodiac. This is one based on newspaper astrology. The biodynamic planting calendar, this is the celestial planting calendar that I have had some input in. And there are other biodynamic planting calendars, but we won't saturate you with them. This is the month of May, still to come, so you can observe. It's color-coded. Blue is for water or leaf. Red is for fire or fruit. Green is for earth, and yellow is for earth or root, and yellow is for air or flower. And you have gray or charcoal areas. Those are what we call blackout periods. And we're still working to identify those more closely. And you should not work the soil or work with plants during a blackout period. And if you plant a crop, for instance, on the 13th of May is a big blackout period. I'll tell you what it's for in a minute, but go to the movies that day. Don't go in your garden and even pull weeds, because it will have a negative impact on the soil. Same thing for the 19th of May. There's an event that is negative for the soil. And again, a briefer period on the 22nd. The one on the 13th is because the moon is at perigee. The moon is too close to the earth. The moon influence is too strong on that day. It will have a negative or fungal effect on anything you plant that day. On the 19th, you have, if you look in the key planetary aspects, you have the planet Mercury is at one of its nodal points, the upper nodal point. It's going across the plane of the ecliptic rising. And again, on the 22nd, the moon is at a lower nodal point, which has a certain negativity to it. There's an upper nodal point of the moon on the 9th, which is a briefer blackout period. So there are reasons for the blackout periods. They vary, but it's a good idea to pay attention. Just stay out of the garden or soil during those periods. Now, the little 3 hours worth of blackout between change from one constellational element, root, to flower, for instance, on the 8th, there's a 3-hour blackout very early in the day. That's due to a phenomenon known as a void of course moon. When the moon is a void of course moon, when the moon travels from one constellation to the next and it makes aspects with the various other members of the solar system, when it makes its last major aspect, it still has a period of time before it goes into the next constellation. That is said to be a void of course situation. On this tropical zodiac, it's clearly identified, but the constellational boundaries for this zodiac are different than the planting calendar. I have something on my website. I'm asking people to work with this concept to see if it makes a difference when you're working with plants. If you plant something before the moon goes void of course, and the same crop after the moon goes void of course, but before it goes to the next constellation, you will have different results, I believe. So we are affected by the events of the solar system, whether we realize it or not. And I had a friend, he's since crossed over, he had me mark his tropical zodiac because he dealt in the commodities market. He did not want to make any kind of transaction when the moon was void of course in the tropical zodiac. My view of it is that we are still geared strongly, our emotional body, which is investment, if nothing else, we're strongly tied to the tropical zodiac still. And he was very successful in his investments when he paid attention to this. So he had me mark his calendar to avoid those times. So, and let me know when you plan to get married or buy a house or a car. You might not want to do it. Sir?
What's that date on May? Which
It's identified. The symbol, the first date I see is the Friday the 3rd. You have moon V/C at 4:47 a.m. And 12 plus hours almost later, the moon goes into the next constellation. So you have a 12-hour period that you don't want to invest in the stock market or buy a house or a car on Friday the 3rd of May. Same thing can be identified for other dates. The moon V/C, and then look to see when it goes next into the next constellation. Now, again, this is Tropical Zodiac, and my view is that the plant kingdom is somewhat liberated from the fiction of a tropical zodiac, but human beings are not. We have this emotional body that we carry around that affects a great deal of what we do. Yes?
So I've been a student of astrology for over a decade, and it's always been curious to me that the Stella Natura actually uses a different zodiac. Is that correct?
I call that the Constellation Zodiac. It's the zodiac that Rudolf Steiner recommended to Elizabeth Vrede back in 1920s. It all depends on what one designates as the constellational boundary. The tropical zodiac is based on a fiction that the first degree of Aries, the constellation Aries, occurs on March 20th or 21st. That's when the sun is deemed in the tropical zodiac to enter that constellation. Well, if you look at the sun on that date and can see the constellation behind it, it's actually in early degrees of Pisces, almost a full zodiac sector beyond the reality. So we're dealing with fiction. It's fake news. The tropical is fiction. It's fake news. You all know that term by now, don't you? All right. But it truly is. They decided 2,000 years ago, Ptolemy decided to put the zodiac in the tropical based on the first degree of Aries at the spring equinox. It's no longer in Aries as the reality. The Indians, Asian Indians, use the sidereal zodiac. Well, both of those zodiacs place the boundaries of the zodiac at a nice, neat 30 degrees, which makes great ease for calculation in a certain sense. But the plants do not react to those boundaries. They react to these boundaries largely. Maria Thun did 50 years of research watching plants and watching the constellations and the skies to come up with her calendar. The Canadian calendar, which is the one I have contributed to, this one, and the sheet that I handed out to you. Don't get too enamored that you cannot function unless you do it by the calendar, because ultimately the factor that should be working with plants is you, the human being. And what you can tune into can possibly overcome some of the cosmic impulses that are coming in because of what's going on in the solar system or the zodiac. So the human being still counts. If we bring too much of our emotional, etheric body into the picture, maybe it doesn't work as well, but that's what we have to look out for.
And were you insinuating that the tropical zodiac does, you feel like, impact our emotional body?
That's my observation. And, that's pure speculation. I haven't done the astrological research. way back, I had the choice of paths to take, and that choice was going to be become a professional astrologer or go into biodynamics, and somehow I ended up in biodynamics. So, I still am very interested in astrology and in the solar system and the influence of what's going on in the heavens and how it affects the earth, the plants, the human being. Not to the extent that I'm plotting out charts or anything yet. There was an anthroposophical contribution to the astrological question, if you will. We have astronomy. Astro, stars. Nomo, naming of. Astronomy names the stars. Astrology purports to be star wisdom, logos, the word of the stars. Sorry, I said wisdom. That's the word of the stars, the logos. Astrosophy, star wisdom, purports to take in another dimension. There is a group in Colorado in particular that's working with, there's even a computer program that plots that. I don't want to go too deeply into that, but it looks at, doing a chart of a human being looks at not only their potential for what's happening in this lifetime. It uses a sidereal zodiac, not a tropical. It does use the nice, neat 30 degrees that makes calculations so much handier. They also track the pre-birth chart. They track not only your geocentric chart, but your heliocentric chart. And there's a lot of interesting work going on. I have the program. I've basically never used it because I've been busy with something else, or I procrastinated, whichever way you want to look at it. But if you're interested,
What's the name of that group?
Astrosophy, there's a group based in California, the Sophia Foundation. They also do workshops in Raleigh-Durham area, Chapel Hill. There's a group there. They will put on a workshop. The Sophia Foundation will. Look up Sophia Foundation on the internet. You can get information on that. Okay, that's taken us a little far afield. Sorry about that. Ready to go on the stirring? Or you got to fill some water? All set.
Fill a little bit of warm water.
Okay. We'll give you a few minutes to fill the warm water, and hopefully somebody has a question that'll keep us busy for the next 10 minutes.
Yes.
Can you talk about the tree harmonizers for a few minutes?
Tree Energizer, a way to use a tree to broadcast, if you will, the biodynamic energy to a wider area around it. And if you're into anthroposophy, there are those that frown on pendulums and dowsing rods. I learned to dowse long before I got into biodynamics and anthroposophy. Okay, we will assume that that's the tree. A tree is a living being, which means not only does it have a physical body, it has a life body or an etheric body. Guess what? When you put seed in the ground for a tree, or when nature does, it doesn't take any particular notice of how you plant that seed in the ground and how the tree ultimately grows. But a tree is a fixed object in the ground. It wants to be, I have found, facing sunrise. But when you plant the tree, often the etheric body is actually looking in a different direction. So, of that tree, the question we ask is, what is the current orientation of the etheric body of that tree in the earth? Hopefully, it's tuning into that. What is the best orientation for the etheric body of that tree in the earth? Which way does the sun rise here? Where's, okay. Didn't get the answer I wanted. All right. Again, what is the best orientation for that tree in the earth? Okay, it's behaving for me. How about that? How did I do that? Mind over matter? All right. All right. What can we do about it? The tree's already in the ground. You frame a prayer, however way you want to do it. My prayer is, within God's will, in the name, with the help of the Holy Spirit and in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I ask that the etheric body of that tree reorient itself for its best future health and growth. And it did. If nothing else, that can give you some indication of the power of prayer. All right, that's step number one. You want to be facing in the same direction. If we in this room move the chairs around so that we were all pointed in different directions, we could not communicate with our surroundings quite as well. For instance, if I'm over here, or if I'm trying to say something to you, you're not going to get as much meaning out of me because you can't see my gestures, body language, whatever you want to call it. You're uncomfortable with talking to someone's back. So the tree has the same problem in its neighborhood. It wants to be facing the best direction for it to grow. Almost always found that that's toward the rising sun. We then take the preparations. I have usually used BC, 500, 501, 508 fermented. I put them in bottles. I tape the bottle shut. I leave headspace so that when I bury them in the earth around the tree, near the trunk, when I bury them in the earth, they will not freeze. I bury them deeply enough, depending on frost line, of course, that they won't freeze. So with the equisetum, which is fermented, I put a little bit of the herb in there as well, and I leave enough headspace. It's a bottle like this, actually. I leave enough headspace so that it will not freeze. Each of those preparations, you can use the pendulum or the L rod to find out which direction on the ferment of the tree around the trunk that you should plant the bottles. And I usually put the 500 to the north, the BC is to the south, the equisetum to the east, and the horn silica to the west. I've got one little handout, I didn't bring any others, but turning a tree into a cosmic energizer. Once you do that, you can also apply tree paste. I didn't bring any tree paste, but if you're in the orchard or vineyard game, it's a great product to consider using biodynamically. Anyway, if you put these in the planted near the trunk, just sunk into the ground in the appropriate direction, you will increase the energy of the tree. How do you know that? Well, again, dowsing. Put your back to the trunk of the tree and walk away from it and ask that the outer boundary of the energy field of the tree be identified. And usually that's with a crossing. Okay, if you do that energy check before you reorient the etheric body, you'll get a kind of a shrunken field. Once you orient the etheric body, it will be expanded. Once you put the preparations around it, it will expand even more. Figment of one's imagination, but try it. See what a difference it makes in the neighborhood. Once you do this treatment of the tree, there are other things you can do for the tree's health that I can mention if need be. Once you treat for the health of that tree with the preparations and reorienting the body, the tree will express itself in more of an ideal pattern for that tree. I have a magnolia tree that I've done that too, and it's kind of an ideal magnolia tree. I don't know if I have a picture of it, but I don't have any way to project it for you, but we'll see. Okay, how are we doing on the water?
Great.
Ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Was that a yes?
Yes.
All right, let's adjourn here and take a walk out to the stirring arena.